Good evening. Welcome to AC Transit's Dana Complete Street Pilot Project Virtual Community Meeting. Before we get started with tonight's program, on behalf of AC Transit, I would like to extend our support and condolences to our brothers and sisters at Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, their friends and family for their loss due to yesterday's tragic event. We stand with VTA. Okay, my name is Robert Del Rosario, I'm the Director of Service Development and Planning. Tonight's virtual community meeting. Hearing some background feed, thanks. Tonight's virtual community meeting is an opportunity for AC Transit to discuss the Dana Complete Street Pilot Project and solicit your feedback. Our agenda for the evening is simple. I will be providing some housekeeping instructions and brief opening remarks. We will then move into a presentation of approximately 25 minutes. This meeting will be recorded. We will have simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and Chinese, as well as closed captioning for the meeting. So I will take a moment to share a number of housekeeping items related to those functions. Okay. So first, closed captioning in English is available by clicking on the CC icon in your Zoom control panel. Secondly, we have simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and Chinese for this meeting. For participants that want to listen to the meeting in English, once we turn on the interpretation feature, you will see a little globe icon in your Zoom control panel. As soon as I finish these instructions and the Spanish and Chinese interpreters finish their instructions, that globe will appear. Once it does, please click on the interpretation globe icon and select English from the menu. Do not do this yet. The globe is not there right now because we have not yet activated the interpretation feature. I will now hand it over to the Spanish and Chinese interpreters for instructions on how to participate in the meeting in these languages. We will all hear these instructions first in Spanish, then in Chinese. That is supposed to happen. After the instructions, we will move to our preferred language channel, after which we will only hear the meeting in our preferred language. Spanish-speaking interpreter, please go ahead and provide your instructions now.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a esta reunión de AC Transit para conversar sobre el Dana Complete Street Pilot Project. Para participar en esta reunión en español, por favor espere hasta que encendamos la función de interpretación. Una vez que se haga eso, verá un mapamundi pequeño en la parte inferior de la pantalla, potencialmente puede estar también en la parte superior. Y en cuanto yo termine estas instrucciones, me seguirá el intérprete chino. Una vez que ese intérprete termine sus instrucciones, aparecerá ese mapamundi. Una vez que aparezca, seleccione el mapamundi, el icono de interpretación y seleccione español desde el menú de selección. Si necesita interpretación al español y ha llamado a la reunión de Zoom por teléfono, puede acceder a la línea de interpretación colgando y llamando al número 844-854-2222 con código de acceso 1213-095. Para repetir, puede llamar a la línea de español al 844-854-2222 con código de acceso 1213-095. Chinese interpreter, please go ahead now.
各位观众朋友，晚上好！欢迎您来参加今晚 AC Transit 网络社区会议。我们为今晚的会议提供中文翻译，请需要中文翻译的参会者稍等片刻。我们介绍完 Zoom 的翻译功能的使用后，立刻会打开 Zoom 的翻译功能。届时，您会在你的电脑屏幕下方看到地球仪的标记，选择中文翻译。请点击地球仪的标记，并选择 Chinese 中文。如果你是拨打 Zoom 的电话参加会议的，并需要中文翻译，为更好为您提供翻译服务，请挂断 Zoom 的电话，另外拨打844-844-0414之后输入密码598821，再重复一遍拨打电话844-844-0414之后输入密码598821。Robert, hand the mic back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Zach, if you can please turn on the interpretation feature so that the attendees can select their language. We will give everyone a second to join their appropriate language channel, English, Spanish, or Chinese. Everyone must select the language. We will wait a moment for everyone to join their appropriate channels. Again, you must use the globe in your control panel to select your language. This includes those of you participating in English. Let's give a 30-second pause now for everyone to join their channel now. All right. Thank you all for your patience as you all work to ensure equitable participation for our non-English speakers. Now I will quickly review how we will take questions this evening. If you're watching this meeting on Zoom, we will take questions during Q&A using the Q&A tool in your Zoom control panel. Please note, raise hands via the Zoom platform will only be used for our phone participants. Those accessing Zoom on a computer or smartphone should use the Q&A tool to ask questions. You can also provide feedback about the project by June 7th, calling AC Transit at 510-891-7262, emailing at, and I'll spell this out for the interpreters, planning at actransit.org. So that's planning at actransit.org. Or sending feedback by mail to AC Transit at 1600 Franklin Street, Oakland, California, 94612. You may also contact AC Transit via any of these methods to request any project materials. If you are interested in the Associated Rapid Corridors Telegraph Avenue project, please join us on June 3rd from 6 to 7:30 for a virtual community meeting. Details of Zoom and call-in information is listed on the project webpage at, and I will also spell this out, www.actransit.org/rapid-corridors. So that's www.actransit.org/rapid-corridors. Okay, so thanks for waiting and welcome to the virtual meeting for the Dana Complete Streets project. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to welcome you to the meeting and thank you for taking some time to learn about the Dana Street project. I see we have some elected officials that have joined us today. I'll do my best to name everyone that's with us this evening. I hope I don't miss anyone. My apologies if I do. So I see we have AC Transit Board Member, Director Diane Shaw, Berkeley City Council Member, Rigel Robinson, and his staffer, Angie Chen, Beth Thomas from the City of Berkeley's Office of Transportation, Kieran Slaughter from the City of Berkeley Office of Economic Development, and Board Member from Telegraph. I think that's everybody. So thank you all for joining us. All right, so let's get this program started. During the pandemic, AC Transit staff has been hard at work every day getting service on the road. And behind the scenes, AC Transit staff has been busy all year long on a variety of key projects, including Tempo BRT, which opened in August of 2020, mobile payment applications so that we can pay fares without using the fare box or using cash. And in March of 2021, AC Transit launched the all-door boarding pilot project, where Clipper card users can board from a front or rear door to tap their cards. Line 6 is one of the 2 routes selected for the all-door boarding pilot project, which helps speed up passenger boarding as well as reduce crowding near the front of the door. The Rapid Corridors project is one of the projects Service Planning Department is undertaking to improve transit service reliability. Meanwhile, we've been hard at work planning service restoration as we recover from the pandemic. So thank you for joining us tonight and for your continued support as we work to restore and build service. For those joining the meeting late, please see the instructions on the screen for closed captioning and language access. We will wait 1 minute to allow folks that have joined late to join their language channels. right, I hope you're able to work that out. So I will now hand over the mic to Ryan Lau. As a note, during the presentation, there will be approximately 5-second pauses. You may have noticed them already as we move between slides to allow interpreters to catch up. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening. My name is Ryan Lau, External Affairs Representative at AC Transit. Thank you for joining us tonight and for your continued support as we work to restore and rebuild service in 13 cities and 8 unincorporated areas of Alameda and Contra Costa counties that we serve. AC Transit prides itself as being the 3rd largest public bus system in California and the 3rd largest transit agency in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our service is critical to the regional economy and for the riders that rely on us for their essential trips. Our trans-based service across the Bay Bridge, San Mateo Bridge, Dunbarton Bridge had surpassed 15,000 average daily rides before the pandemic and was a service that had consistently shown year-over-year growth. And we were getting 30,000 students to school every single day. Whether you're a rider, a business owner, an elected official, or even if you drive, I guarantee you that anything that impacts AC Transit in one way or another impacts you. Prior to March 2020, we carried approximately 189,000 weekday riders and more than 53 million riders annually. As of last week, our ridership is still down 60% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Our Trans-Bay ridership has been severely impacted due to people working from home and not commuting. But the pandemic will not last forever. And when the economy reopens, we will continue to play a critical role in the Bay Area's transportation network, connecting with 16 other public and private bus systems, 25 BART stations, 6 Amtrak stations, and 4 ferry terminals. While our overall ridership today is a fraction of what it was before the pandemic, we continue to provide a critical service, in particular for those that have continued to ride during the pandemic. AC Transit has always been a lifeline for many, and our service has always been a critical component of the fabric of many communities. Ensuring the sustainability of AC Transit service is truly a matter of equity, given that 65% of our riders are low income, 75% are people of color. A rider survey conducted during the pandemic revealed that those still riding are dependent on our service. 40% were making essential trips, meaning they were going to work, school, making medical appointments, or going to the grocery store. 15% identified as essential workers. 43% indicated that they don't have access to a car. Today, AC Transit ridership is the 2nd highest of any Bay Area transit agency, carrying more riders than BART on an average weekday, and 2nd only to Muni. I'll now hand over the mic to Mika Miyasato, who will present the Dana Complete Streets pilot project.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Mika Miyasato, Senior Transportation Planner at AC Transit, and I'm pleased to speak with you about the Dana Complete Street pilot project. Let's start the presentation with some background information about the project. The Berkeley City Council approved the Southside pilot project in May 2017, which included the Dana Complete Street pilot project as part of the overall vision. The Southside pilot project included Bancroft Way, bus lane, and protected bike lane, which was implemented in 2018 between Dana Street and Fulton Street. The project is being developed and delivered through a partnership between AC Transit and the City of Berkeley. This project is located on Dana Street between Dwight Way and Bancroft Way. AC Transit Line 6 runs along this area, connects downtown Berkeley and downtown Oakland. It is a high ridership route, which approximately had 5,700 weekday riders pre-COVID. This is one of the highest ridership routes in AC Transit. AC Transit Dana Street project complements the City of Berkeley's Southside Complete Streets project, which is set to launch its public outreach activities later this year. AC Transit and Berkeley staff are coordinating closely, including in stakeholder outreach, design, construction, and evaluation efforts. This project is closely coordinated with, but distinct from the City of Berkeley's Southside Complete Streets project, which will build permanent improvements on Dana Street following AC Transit pilot project. The 2017 Berkeley Bicycle Plan called for evaluation of two-way protected bikeway on Dana Street between Bancroft Way and Dwight Way, which is what the Dana Complete Street pilot project is proposing. The Dana Street project advances the City of Berkeley's transit first policy by giving priority to alternative transportation and transit over single occupant vehicles on transit routes. The project also advances city's strategic plan goal. Let's give our interpreters a moment to swap. The Associated Cities Southside Complete Streets project includes the Bancroft Way, Telegraph Avenue, Dana Street, and Fulton Street, and it is separate from AC Transit Dana Complete Street pilot project. As a pilot project, AC Transit will evaluate the pilot's effectiveness once it is constructed. Evaluation may identify additional design changes, if any are needed, for integration into the city's Southside Complete Street project. The city's Southside project is expected to repave Dana Street and make the pilot project temporary elements permanent. The pilot project will enhance transit reliability, especially with other AC Transit efforts, including the Older Boarding pilot project and signal and bus stop improvements along Telegraph Avenue. The pilot project will improve access to and from the bus stop on Dana Street, and it will increase the comfort of people riding bicycles and walking along Dana Street. AC Transit is implementing signal improvements, providing sidewalk repair to improve access to bus stops and bus stop relocation and consolidation along Line 6, mainly along Telegraph Avenue. Together with other improvements for Line 6, overall performance of Line 6 is expected to improve. The Dana Complete Street project limit is a 4-block segment between Bancroft Way and Dwight Way. Specific improvements include a two-way bikeway on the west side of the street that will provide two-way access for cyclists between UC Berkeley campus and the Dana Street Bicycle Boulevard south of Dwight Way. A bus boarding island at Haight Street, and transit signal priority. Parking is shifted to the east side of the street to allow fire access along the street. This includes a commercial and passenger loading. In addition to the Dana Street pilot project, AC Transit is proposing nearby changes to Line 6 bus stops that run along block of Durand Avenue between Dana Street and Ellsworth Street to improve bus reliability. Two-way protected bikeway that is being proposed along the west side of Dana Street will physically separate bicycle riders from vehicles on the street. Vertical soft hits posts and painted striped pavement, as well as a bus boarding island, will serve as a physical buffer for the protected bikeway along Dana Street. Research has indicated that protected bikeway reduce conflicts and injuries. A major benefit of separated bikeways is that they help create a low-stress bicycling environment and can attract new riders that would otherwise feel uncomfortable on the streets with little to no cycling infrastructure. A protected corner will be constructed at the northeast corner of the Haight Street and Dana Street intersection. A protected corner is a safety treatment at intersections that can help reduce conflicts between right-turning vehicles and people walking or on bicycles. Compared to a conventional corner, vehicles navigating a protected corner have the space to to yield to people walking or cycling through the intersection before completing their turn. This additional space for the right turn also means that vehicles are meeting the bikeway at an angle that is closer to 90 degrees, allowing for improved visibility of oncoming cyclists, removing the need for drivers to look over their shoulders to look for cyclists as they turn. There is existing bus stop on Dana Street at Haight Street, near side of the intersection, meaning just before crossing the intersection, that is located along the ADA inaccessible landscape planting strip. As part of this project, AC Transit proposes to install a bus boarding island on the far side of intersection, meaning after crossing an intersection, that will provide better access for everyone. Bus boarding islands are designated waiting and boarding areas that allow for quicker bus boarding and reduces delay for people using the bus. They are positioned so that bicycle riders travel behind the island, shown in the photo on the top right. This removes the conflict between buses and bicycles at the curb. The island will also be ADA accessible with curb ramps to allow people with wheelchairs and accessibility needs to access boarding islands similar to what is shown in the photo, which allows for direct access to the crosswalk at the intersection. To provide the needed street width for emergency vehicles along Dana Street, parking and loading cannot be on the same side of the street as the two-way protected bikeway. Therefore, on-street residential permit and paid parking and commercial and passenger loading zones on the Dana Street are proposed to be shifted from the west side to the east side of the street. Changes to the number and type of parking spaces and loading zones will be detailed later in the presentation. Transit signal priority allows buses to request priority as they approach an intersection, and the signal can grant additional seconds of green light to reduce time spent waiting at red lights. Transit signal priority will be installed on Dana Street, at Haight Street, and Dwight Way. This complements improvements being made along Telegraph Avenue from downtown Berkeley to downtown Oakland by the AC Transit Rapid Corridors project. Coupled with signal coordination and retiming, transit signal improvements will improve transit service reliability and reduce travel time. The signal equipment can also be used by the city's emergency vehicles to get on scenes more quickly. Implementing this pilot project will result in a few trade-offs. Relocating and replacing the existing bus stop as a new bus boarding island results faster and more reliable travel time and improves access for transit riders. Installing a two-way bikeway and changing parking and loading along Dana Street also allows for the improved comfort and safety for people who bicycle and ride transit. Changes to the number and type of parking spaces and loading zones as a result of these proposed improvements will be detailed in a moment. Now I'm handing over the mic to Will Buller, who will go over detailed design concept by block.
Thank you, Mika. My name is Will Buller, traffic engineer at AC Transit, and I'll be walking you through the design concept for each block. This map provides an overview of the preliminary design. Parking and loading spaces are color-coded by type. Purple bars indicate relocated residential permit parking. Orange bars indicate relocated pay parking. Yellow bars indicate commercial loading zones. White bars indicate passenger loading zones. Blue bar indicates the relocated accessible parking space blue zone. And the green bars indicate the proposed two-way protected bikeway. The blue circle with a bus and passenger icon represents the planned bus boarding island. The traffic light icon represents intersections with traffic signal improvements. And the red circles with a P inside represents pay parking stations. To make reviewing the specific details at each proposed bus stop change easier to understand, we've broken down the Dana Street project area into two segments, which we'll now review, starting from the south end of the project area moving north. In addition, we'll review proposed bus stop changes on Durant Avenue immediately adjacent to the Dana Street project area. You'll have the opportunity to ask specific questions via the question and answer chat on Zoom or by raising your hand if you're on the phone. Let's give the interpreters a moment to swap. The project's southern limit is at Dwight Way. The proposed two-way cycle track connects the existing Dana Street Bike Boulevard south of Dwight Way. This slide illustrates how bicyclists transition between the existing bike boulevard and the proposed two-way cycle track at Dwight. To make a smooth transition, the bicyclists, the project proposes to create a short two-way cycle track on Dana Street south of Dwight Way. With this design, vehicles and bicyclists would not have a conflict at the Dana-Dwight intersection. Bicyclists will cross through the intersection using the green signal indication at the same time as vehicles. Pedestrians would continue to use the existing west crosswalk to cross Dwight Way. Now we'll walk you through the 4-block project area from south to north. This map shows improvements on Dana Street from Dwight Way to Channing Way. Most notably, segment A improvements move the near side bus stop on Hay Street at Dana Street intersection to a new far side bus boarding island. Far side meaning just past the intersection. This intersection will also receive a protected corner treatment to improve safety for people walking and biking. The accessible parking space blue zone that is currently on Dana Street, just past Hay Street, will be relocated around the corner onto Hay Street, where it will still serve the adjacent building. Residential permit parking will be relocated from the west side to the east side of the street. From Dwight Way to Channing Way, the change in number of parking spaces is a reduction of 3 metered spaces. In addition of an addition of two 2-hour residential permit spaces and a reduction of 1 2-hour only parking space. This is the space that becomes the accessible parking space. The map shows improvements from Channing Way to Bancroft Way. This segment includes moving parking and loading to the east side of the street, while adding 2 additional commercial and passenger loading zone spots on the street. Parking pay stations indicated by the icon with a P in a red circle will accompany segments of relocated pay parking. From Channing Way to Bancroft Way, the change in the number of parking spaces is a reduction of 4 metered spaces and the addition of 2 commercial loading zone spaces, in addition to the relocated loading zones. We're currently working with the city and UC Berkeley in curb space usage along UC Berkeley residential buildings, and this may result in a slight change to the proposed parking spaces shown on the map. This map is provided for information and shows other proposed bus stop changes that AC Transit is proposing to make that are not part of the Dana Complete Street pilot project. The proposed improvements are on Durant Avenue from Ellsworth to Dana, where bus line 6 travels through. This is immediately adjacent to the Dana Street project. The bus stop near the Ellsworth Street intersection is proposed to remain. The existing bus stop at the Dana Street intersection is proposed to be removed as the proximity of the bus stops are very close and would allow for additional parking or passenger loading. As this is a pilot project, AC Transit will evaluate the project after construction. We'll continue to coordinate with the City of Berkeley staff through design, construction, and evaluation of the project. Preliminary design for the pilot project was completed in March of 2021. We're currently soliciting feedback on the design concept. Comments on the project are due June 7. The summary of the public input is expected to be reported to Berkeley Transportation Commission on June 17th and will go to the City Council in July of 2021. Following the public outreach activities, AC Transit will finalize design in the summer and fall of 2021. Bid and advertisement of the construction will take place in late 2021. We'll expect construction to start in the spring of 2022 and end in the fall of 2022. AC Transit will evaluate the project after construction and will continue to coordinate with City of Berkeley staff. Thank you everyone for listening. This concludes the presentation portion of this meeting. We'll now move into the question and answer session.
All right, thanks, Will. My prompt tells me that I'm supposed to start the Q&A portion at 6:36 p.m. and it's 6:36 p.m. So that's pretty amazing. So that was a lot of information, and but we know it's important information to share with you. Not only the ways in which we have been impacted by the pandemic, but also that we are still advancing projects that are aimed at improving service quality, reliability, and the rider experience. With that, we are now ready to transition to the portion of the program for comments, feedback, and Q&A. Many of you here tonight live, work, and/or travel on Dana Street, and we want to hear from you. We will be posing any questions that arise to our panel for a response so that all participants are able to hear the answer. We will be recording comments and feedback addressing the Dana Street project so that we can consider them for refining and finalizing the project design. But for the sake of time, we will not restate these. First, for people viewing the presentation on a computer or smartphone, please use the Q&A tool in your Zoom control panel and type in your question or comments. Please do not use the raise hand function if you're watching the meeting on the Zoom platform, as we're reserving this feature for folks calling in on the phone only to ask their questions. Now I'm going to review how people joining this meeting on the phone can participate in the Q&A session. While I give instructions to the English phone line participants, the interpreters will give specific instructions to those participating via the Spanish and Chinese phone lines. For those of you on Zoom on your computer, if you have a question for our panel, this is a time to get it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. For English-speaking participants calling into the meeting on the phone, when we begin taking questions from the English phone line, you will need to dial *9 to raise your hand. Then, when you are called upon by the last 4 digits of your phone number, dial *6 to unmute yourself. I'm just giving you a pause here for the interpreters. All right, so before we start the Q&A, we will take a 1-minute break to allow time for interpreters to switch roles, catch your breath, take a sip of water. I want to acknowledge other elected officials that have actually joined us today. Sorry if we missed you up front. I see we have AC Transit Director Gene Walsh, Diane Yee from the City of Berkeley's Office of Transportation, and Derek Sagehorn from the East Bay Transit Riders Union. So thank you all for joining us, and then we'll take a 1-minute pause and then jump into Q&A. Okay, so let's move on to the Q&A, and thanks for your patience. So now I'm going to introduce the panelists for comments, feedback, and Q&A. We do have 4 panelists tonight, 2 of which you heard from. So we have Mika Miyasato, who presented earlier. She's a senior transportation planner, project manager on the AC Transit side. We have Will Buller, who's our traffic engineer and presented right before me. We have Michael Eshelman. He's our manager of service planning at AC Transit, in case we have any service planning questions. We have Eric Anderson, senior transportation planner at the City of Berkeley and project manager for the city's Southside Complete Streets project. And we have Kendra Rowley, who's a civil engineer at Fair and Pierce and is assisting AC Transit on the Dana Street project design. So first question, we will begin with one of the questions received prior to the meeting, and questions received in the Zoom Q&A chat box. So the first question is directed towards Eric at the City of Berkeley. We need more loading spaces. Can you change parking loading space designation? And this is a question from a resident. Eric, you want to take that one?
Sure thing. Again, this is Eric Anderson from the City of Berkeley. We are in the process of evaluating the loading needs along this corridor. And we're currently looking at the institutions along the corridor, such as UC Berkeley, churches, as well as the residential blocks. So there is opportunity to put in more loading zones along the corridor, but that's something that we'll be evaluating. And it's important to note that that needs to be balanced against preserving the residential parking supply for the residents who live on this corridor. So yes, thank you for that question. That's definitely something that we're looking at.
All right, thanks, Eric. The next question is from a person from the church along Dana. The traffic island will impact our church's drop-off for members. Can the island be moved either north or south of our church at 2430 Dana Street? I can turn this over to Will. Do you want to take a shot at it? And then we can always have Eric also chime in.
Yes, good evening. Will Buller, AC Transit traffic engineer. There were several alternatives considered when we decided to place the bus bulb on the far side there of the intersection. Near side stop versus the far side stop, and the way that we were striping the intersection, and also the placement of the parking. And due to the geometry of the intersection and the movements that were involved, we decided to go with the alignment that we have for our pilot, to enhance visibility before the left or the right turns at the intersection, and to allow for more buffered space for the bicyclists. That indirectly answers the question about moving the parking onto the east side versus the west side.
Thanks, Will. All right, let's go to our next question here. Explain how bike riders will transition from two-way cycle track to two-way street south of Dwight. Kendra, I know that you're close to the design. Is this something you want to take on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Kendra, traffic engineer with Fair and Peers. So there was a graphic provided in the PowerPoint that illustrated this, but I can explain it a little bit more in detail verbally. So what we've done to provide that transition is to establish a short section of two-way cycle track to essentially establish the bikeway on the near side of the intersection prior to that transition. And this allows cyclists to position themselves such that they do not have to make a diagonal movement through the intersection. What this also does is
So Kendra has a choppy connection. Why don't we, oh, Kendra, are you back on?
Oh.
We lost you there for just the last few seconds.
Uh-oh, okay.
So
I'm not sure where I cut out.
After the diagonal, what this also does is.
Oh, okay. What this also does is allows cyclists to move through the intersection without any vehicle conflicts. So vehicles can make their movements at the same time as bikes, and they are moving on separate paths. So there are no conflicts there.
Great. Thanks, Kendra, for the response. So we have another question about pedestrian crossings. So next is Walk Bike Berkeley believes that pedestrians should be allowed to cross Dwight on the east side of Dana. In this heavily used pedestrian area, we think there would be a high non-compliance if they were not allowed to cross, which would be dangerous. Has there been any study of how many pedestrians cross illegally at this intersection? I think I'm going to give this one to Eric.
Hi, again, Eric Anderson from the city of Berkeley. Yes, we're aware of the issue, which is that at the intersection of Dana and Dwight, the crosswalk on the east side of that intersection is not currently open for pedestrians. And the reason for that is because as you're driving south on Dana, it's a left turn only at Dwight. So in order to separate the pedestrians from those turning vehicles, we don't have a crosswalk at that location. And this left turn is also one of the things that, as Mika noted, has led us to place the bikeway on the west side of the street, because we don't want those left turning vehicles crossing the path of bikes that are trying to go north-south through that intersection of Dwight. So there are a number of different things that are leading us to keep that left turn the way that it is, have the bikes on the west side of the street, and have the crosswalk on the west side of the street as well. I will say that because this is a pilot project, when we come back with the Southside Complete Streets project that the city is going to be undertaking after the pilot, we will be looking at this design again. And if our subsequent evaluation and study finds that the bikeway may need to be moved to the opposite side of the street, then we at that time would also look at the crosswalk, because that may trigger us to need to change that traffic signal at Dwight and Dana so that the bikeway and the crosswalk can both operate at that intersection.
All right. Thanks, Eric. So the next question is probably for Kendra again, since it's a project design detail. Will there be any impacts on street trees for the project? Can the project incorporate a full planting of street trees in existing gaps and missing spots along data? There are many spots where street trees are needed on this street. And also Kendra or any of the other panelists, if you want to pull up a previous slide as a visual to help answer your question, we can do that.
Robert, this is Mika. I can take the question regarding the trees. So this is Mika Miyasato, AC Transit. And the AC Transit received the funding from Alameda CTC to improve the transit operations of the Dana Street and also addressing the connectivity issues in the Southside neighborhood, meaning the connectivity for bicycles, walking, and the transit alternative modes. So this type of funding does not include a street beautification. So this project focuses on the alternative transportation aspects of the Dana Street.
Thanks, Mika. Okay, let's see, pavement loops. I think, Will, you can answer this one. Will there be loops in the pavement so that bikes can activate traffic lights as there are at other bike routes?
Along this corridor, we have video detection at Dwight for bicyclists only. So that's the only intersection that's getting that bike actuation. The other intersections are not getting that type of actuation. The bicyclists will be using the pedestrian signals, and those signals will be on recall. So the bicyclists will have that all along the corridor every time that cycles to the PEDs, every cycle.
Thanks, Will. I'm just looking through the feed here to see if other comments or questions are coming in. All right, Will, this one's back to you. Can you add a crosswalk on the east side of Dana Street to cross Dwight Way? I think this is the same question than earlier. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, Will.
Well, what I would add is that of course, this was a pilot project, and the improvements necessary for that particular element would be quite costly. They would require a lot of civil improvements, signal mods, and also a lot of analysis would be required. So, it was not an envisioned part of this particular pilot, but as Eric had said, it's a consideration for the Southside project.
Thanks, Will. We do have a transit-related question. If a bus rider is coming from UC campus, wishes to board southbound, will they need to walk south 3 blocks on Dana to Haste to reach the first bus stop? It's a good question. Mike, you want to give that one a stab?
That is a great question. So previously you could pick up the bus at Dana and Durant. We're still keeping the stop at Durant and Ellsworth. So you walk down that block, one block to pick up that stop far side of Ellsworth. Otherwise, yes, the other option would be to walk down to this new bus boarding island within the confines of this project.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I see that we have a number of comments that we are definitely recording. Here's one that we want to put out there and see if the panelist has any comments on. The comment is, I would like to propose that the bus island be moved to the northwest side of the Dana-Haste intersection. There is no apparent need for a protected bicycle pedestrian bulb on the southwest side, since Dana-Haste are 2 crossing one-way intersections. 2414 Dana Street has a non-functional driveway, pictures are available, and thus there is 80 feet of unused space on the west side of Dana, north of Haste Street, to accommodate both the bus lane and the needs of the right turning drivers. Finally, Haste Street west westbound is 2 lanes, and Dana Street south of Haste formerly was also 2 lanes. The most rapid traffic at this intersection is left turning, downhill accelerating traffic from Haste Street onto Dana Street. The bus island creates an unnecessary pinch point, another reason to support moving the bus island north of the intersection. So this is about the location of the bus island and then the speed of traffic. Mika, do you want to discuss this or have comments on this comment?
Can Will or Eric get started on this
Sure.
topic?
Sure.
Eric, you want to go ahead? I'd be happy to jump in either
Oh,
way.
sure thing. Again, Eric Anderson from the city of Berkeley. Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different reasons why. I mean, we've already described some of the reasons why the bus boarding island is located where it is. And I think AC Transit staff may have more insight into some of the transit operational benefits. But generally speaking, when the city partners with AC Transit on a project like this, we try wherever we can to move the bus stops to the far side of the signal, because that improves efficiency of bus operations, makes the and helps to reduce the travel times for folks who are riding the bus. So I'll let AC Transit respond to that. But in regard to the high-speed downhill left turns, that's actually a really great point. Those are exactly the kinds of left turns that we are seeking to slow down through our Vision Zero program. So the Vision Zero program is an attempt to implement our Vision Zero policy with the goal of eliminating all severe and fatal traffic crashes by the year 2028. It's a very ambitious goal, and we found that left turns, especially high-speed left turns across a crosswalk like this location, are correlated as one of the top 5 traffic violations that result in severe and fatal traffic crashes involving pedestrians. So this is actually a location where our hope is to slow down those left turns, and narrowing the roadway opening there with this bus boarding island will hopefully help to serve some of that traffic calming function, and reducing the sort of tightening up that corner by making a tighter turn to get into Dana is also intended to help achieve that goal as well. And before I pass it to Will, I actually wanted to tag on a little bit of a response to the previous question about the impact on the parking at the front of First Church. So one of the things we're looking at is trying to improve the ADA accessibility of the corridor as part of this project. And at this particular location, the ADA ramp to access the church is located on the north side of the building at Haste. So we're right now in a process of reaching out to UC, to the churches along the corridor, and holding individual meetings to try to assess these ADA accessibility needs and really get the loading zones and parking and blue zones all dialed in to be as accessible as possible. So we want to invite the person who is asking us the questions about First Church to please reach out and make contact. We would love to have a direct personal contact at the church and discuss those needs, hopefully on site, where we can get a really clear sense of how best to serve your needs. So thank you. Pass it back to Will now.
Thanks.
Yes, hi, Will Buller, AC Transit Traffic Engineer. Thanks, Eric. Eric did an excellent job. The only thing I would add is that whenever we're trying to place our bus stops, especially with a boarding island, it's all about visibility when we're interacting with pedestrians, bicyclists, and turning vehicles. If we could pull up the slide that showed the that particular intersection, it will help in my description. So as you can see, if we were to pull the boarding island to the near side of the intersection, or the north leg of Haste on Dana at Haste, the bus, as it would be positioned, accepting passengers and dropping off passengers, would block visibility for both bicyclists, pedestrians to see vehicles that are going to make a right turn, as well as the vehicles or the drivers in those cars making the right turn, to be able to see the pedestrians and the bicyclists getting ready to cross the street. The other thing I would bring to everyone's attention is that if a passenger were to come off of the bus onto the boarding island and then attempt to cross in the crosswalk in front of the bus, which is ill-advised, they should go to the corner and hit the pedestrian walk. But if they do, they will be coming out from behind a bus blindly to a vehicle adjacent to the bus, which would cause a very high risk situation. So those are the only two additional things that I'd want to add.
All right, thanks, Will. We have a question about signage, and this will be someone that's close to project design. And I think, Eric, maybe you might be best to answer. What signage will be installed to improve safety in this project?
I actually think Kendra has an answer prepared to this one. Am I right, Kendra? Am I putting you on the spot?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. No, that's correct. Again, this is Kendra, traffic engineer with Fair and Peers. So one of the things, so I'll start with the Dana and Hayes Street intersection. At that location, which is the intersection that we were just reviewing on the screen, there's the protected intersection, or protected corner rather, design, where vehicles are given more space to yield to bicyclists. There will also be signage in addition to that design to just alert drivers that they need to be yielding to cyclists at that location. In addition, we will be placing additional signage at the Dwight and Dana location to help direct bikes through that transition. Yeah, here. And as well as kind of related to the question about bicycle detection earlier, everywhere that bikes are required to use the pedestrian signals, there will be additional signage to guide bicyclists that is the way to move through the intersection. And what else? Yeah, I think that's about it at this pilot stage.
Great. Thanks, Kendra. I'll read a few more comments from the Q&A page, and then we can have some of our panelists chime in if they want to respond to comments. So the first is, again, from the member of the church there. The entrance to our church parking lot is on Dana, just south of the bus island at 2430 Dana. Members turning right on Dana into the driveway for the parking lot have to make a very wide right turn. Also, if the turn is made into the driveway when a bus is done loading and ready to go, then there could be a collision. Will, as traffic engineer, do you want to chime in on that and your thoughts?
Will Buller, AC Transit traffic engineer. If I understand the question correctly, Robert, they're saying that there's an entrance on Dana, right? Just past the boarding island, or is that correct? Is that how I'm understanding it? Okay.
And what complex?
Right, and so they're concerned about the conflict of buses turning or coming out as drivers are turning into their driveway. And our driver, is that correct? That's correct. Yeah, and I just want to inform everybody that our drivers are very alert. They're professional drivers, and they're prepared for that kind of movement. They're aware of the driveways and where they are, the position of all the vehicles in their surroundings at any time, and they would always give the right of way in that kind of a circumstance. And they don't exit until they have a completely clear passageway without possibility of incident.
Great, thanks, Will. This one can either be for Eric, or if Mika, you want to jump in here. We currently have a lot of loitering and the associated litter and vandalism. Very probably having a bus stop in front of our main steps and building will increase the loitering, litter, and vandalism. Mika, why don't you take that on the purchase of a bus stop?
Yes, we work closely with the city and city partners. AC Transit maintains the bus stop pole. The sidewalks are typically maintained by the city. And another things that I like to point out that where we have bus shelters, AC Transit, actually the Clear Channel maintains the bus shelters, and they have regularly scheduled the cleaning of the shelters as well as the trash pickup. So when there is a issues, we like public to report to AC Transit customer service. There is a website where you can report the issues with the dirty shelters, and also the provide the input on the condition of bus stops. Eric, would you like to elaborate on from the city's perspective?
No, actually, I think you covered it. The city is very proactive in this area in terms of street maintenance. That's one of our goals. We have a long-standing and very productive relationship with the Telegraph Business Improvement District that does work kind of throughout the Telegraph District and Southside area on Telegraph and Bancroft. So yeah, this is definitely a concern that we share, and one that we're committed to working with AC Transit to make sure that does not become an issue. So thank you for that question.
All right, why don't we pause here to give the interpreters a break? I know they've been working hard, so let's give a 1-minute pause. All right, why don't we just read out a few more comments while we get close to wrapping up here. This one's again on, I think it's a follow-up to Mike's response on the bus stop access and how it's related to safety. Mike, you don't have to comment unless you have additional things to add, but the comment states, walking 3 blocks south to Hayes or 2 blocks west to Ellsworth to board is an imposition on and night safety hazard for bus riders, particularly women traveling alone. Keeping the Dana Durant boarding point makes much more sense from this standpoint. If AC Transit wants to serve southbound riders more effectively, don't make them walk 2 to 3 blocks from campus to find the bus stop, especially at night. Also, if you need more reasons, people riding east, south from downtown to reach Telegraph businesses or the UC campus won't want to be dropped off 3 blocks south of campus at haste. Probably more an observation. Mike, if you have anything to add, great. If not, we can also move on to other comments.
Yeah, I think this is a really challenging situation and something we face everywhere. When we have 2 stops on the same block, we have to figure out which stop we need to consolidate. And in this case, it means that folks coming from east and north are going to walk a little bit further. if we'd eliminated the Ellsworth stop, then it'd mean folks from south and west are going to walk a little bit further. So there's trade-offs in every decision that we make. And for this project, with adding the infrastructure on Dana, this is the decision we decided to go with for the proposal, and keeping in mind that this is a pilot and that we're going to evaluate it and gather input throughout the entire process.
Great, thanks, Mike. I should also point out, I know we're receiving a lot of comments from the church. We have reached out directly to the church to hear their concerns, and we'll continue to do that and work through their concerns and see if we can update our design in any way. But I know they're an important constituent that we want to make sure is heard throughout this project process. A question about all-door boarding. Mike, I know you're the project manager for this. The question is, I've seen buses that have rear door boarding for the line 6, which travels along Telegraph and Dana. Can we do this with all the buses, the speed boarding?
That's definitely the dream. Yeah, this is a really exciting project that we're working on, and we're seeing some promising early results. And I think really the limiting factor at this point is how many of the actual the Clipper readers, literally the number of readers that are available. So all the Clipper readers in the region are spoken for at this point, but the region is working furiously towards implementing the next generation of Clipper. And with that next generation of Clipper, we have the option of being able to roll those out to all of the buses in the entire system. So we want to kind of work out the kinks with these 2 high ridership lines, the 51B and the 6, and then see what lessons we need to learn and how we need to adjust policies and procedures and make changes to get the program right for when the opportunity comes to roll it out to even more service.
Thanks, Mike. And wait right there. We have another question about service and particularly ADA passenger drop-off. It's an innovative question, but I don't know if we'll be able to accommodate. So it says the number 6 bus is only scheduled every 11 to 13 minutes, which means approximately 50 plus minutes of the day have no bus present. I think it means 50 plus minutes of the hour. Even more time when no passengers are boarding or disembarking. Dana Haste is a low frequency signal bus stop for riders. The majority of students disembark on Durant. Can there be a concession for the bus island on Dana Haste to allow for ADA compliant bus passenger drop off when there is not a bus present? And that sounds tough, Mike, because I think we don't know when the ADA drop offs are going to happen, but maybe you can provide some response to that.
Yeah, I think that's really challenging. We'd have to probably do some research and see what's out there in terms of how long a typical non-bus ADA drop-off or pickup takes. I know for a bus, it can take several minutes. And if it does take several minutes and it's minute 9 between the 10-minute bus, then it will create a problem for us where we won't be able to access the boarding island. So that's something to look at. I think it's a good suggestion. And it would certainly, if it could work here, it could work in a lot of other places and really expand access for persons with disabilities. But at this point, I definitely can't commit to making it a hybrid bus stop ADA zone. We'd have to do a lot more research.
Right, thanks, Mike. This one's about striping. Will, maybe you want to take a look at this one, and city staff can also tag team on this. Will the striping on the ground at Dana Haste intersection allow for cars to make right turns while other vehicles are waiting to go straight southbound? Will the plan create a raised bulb or just lines on the ground that right turning vehicles will be able to cross over? The Durant Dana bus stop is 10 times more used than the Dana Haste bus stop, by the way.
Hello, Will Buller, AC Transit Traffic Engineer.
Will, you need a slide up for that, or are you okay?
I'm sorry?
You need a slide up for that one, or are you okay?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I think you could put the slide back up and just repeat the pertinent question real quick. While the slide is up, that would be great.
Sure. Disappeared off my screen. Let's see if I can get to it. It's will the striping on the ground at Dana Haste intersection allow for cars to make right turns while other vehicles are waiting to go straight southbound? Will the plan create a raised bulb or just lines on the ground that right turning vehicles will be able to cross over?
Okay, so what I understand here is they're talking about that small little island area past the crosswalk in the middle of the intersection when they talk about making a right turn, and is it going to be a raised island or a soft painted island area? That's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, does it allow for striping? Does the striping and the movement for the signal allow for vehicles to go southbound at the same time that other vehicles are going right? The answer to the first part of the question is that the plan for the operation of the signal is that vehicles will be able to go through the intersection while other vehicles will be making their right turn. The right turn will be maneuvering around a soft painted island. And you'll note that there are a couple of small little delineators insinuated there in the island. But, you know, please keep in mind that this is a concept. It is not a final design. And we're working through all the details. We're going to take your comment into consideration, and we'll work closely with city staff as we move through to final design.
And Eric Anderson from City of Berkeley. I'll add that one of the things we like about this design is that the right-hand turn, that the area where that right-hand turn is happening is wide enough that a single car that's turning right can start their turn, and they can slow down or stop to yield at the bikeway or the crosswalk, and they're actually out of the way of the rest of the cars that need to go on through the intersection. So we're actually kind of organizing things in a way to enable the right turns to get out of the way of the vehicles that are going through. And then with regard to the materials that we're using, since this is a pilot, the intent, I think, as was said during Mika's presentation, is for these buffers and islands to be paint with some vertical traffic posts in them to guide drivers around the islands. But when the Southside Complete Streets project comes back, if we confirm that this is the right design that we want to go forward with, then one of our goals would be to try to make as many of those painted buffers and painted islands permanent using concrete or other more durable materials. And there's a lot of great opportunities here to maybe look at doing some green infrastructure to treat stormwater and sort of, you know, bring in lots of co-benefits to support other city policies around sustainability and environmental handling of stormwater. The one caveat to that is, and if there's anybody on this meeting who lives along that block face, one thing you might be thinking is, hang on, where do I put my trash bins? So one thing that we're going to be needing to factor into the design of this long term is to allow space in these buffer areas for trash bin placement. So that's one thing we'll be factoring in. Right now, it's not a problem because this is just paint. You can put your trash bin right on top of it. But as we go forward with the Southside project, we'll need to consider how we leave some of that space for residents to put their trash bins out and keep it easy for our zero waste staff to be able to collect that efficiently. So anyway, just kind of looking forward to the long term with that answer. But it kind of it's part of what we're keeping in mind with the overall thinking with these buffers and islands.
Thanks, Eric. One more comment that I do want to read, and it's an important one. Most of the questions, answers have been from or about one church. There are actually 4 churches along Dana, plus the Town and Gown Club. They not only have their own events, but some rent out their spaces. Lost it here. Some rent out their spaces for other events. Some of those events are quite large, particularly First Congregational Church, where many music concerts and public lectures with several hundred attendees are held. It's crucial that AC Transit and the city take into account event loading, unloading for these events along Dana and adjacent streets. Please specifically contact all 5 congregations, clubs, and work with them. Mika, do you want to touch on outreach efforts for the impacted businesses and churches?
Sure. So we have notified the stakeholders, residents, businesses along the Dana Street via mail. So that was the first contact we have intended. And also for the large institutions, we called several places and we started meeting on individual basis to listen to their operations, concerns, and how this project could potentially benefit the stakeholders or that poses challenges to their operations. So we are working, AC Transit was working closely with the city of Berkeley in developing a design concept that could work for the all users of the Dana Street, as well as the businesses and stakeholders fronting a Dana Street. Eric, would you like to add from your city's perspective?
No, thanks. I thought that was a great response, and I really appreciate this question. As Mika mentioned, we are in the process of AC Transit is in the process of doing individualized outreach to these stakeholders along the corridor. The city's goals are to not just to have a negative impact, but actually to have a positive impact in terms of how can we improve the accessibility to these facilities? How could we improve the passenger loading that we know is really critical at these locations? So we want to see a positive change come out of that process. Just on a personal note, I've been to concerts at First Congregational Church, and it's just a wonderful, cherished institution in Berkeley, as are all the churches along this corridor. So we certainly want to partner with all of these organizations to try to improve conditions along the street as part of this project. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Mika.
And one more thing, Robert, that those of the folks that we have left some messages and also have mails, and we have that included AC Transit phone number as well as the email addresses. And so I like to encourage stakeholders, residents to provide us a written comments and or the questions so that we can consider those elements in developing, refining the design of the Dana Street pilot project.
Great, thanks, Mika. I'm just going to quickly read. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, Robert. So Ryan Lau from External Affairs at AC Transit. I just also wanted to mention, we have offered opportunities for stakeholders along the corridor that have kind of more complex issues, opportunities to go on site and sort of discuss their particular issues, which is, what we did with this particular individual from the church today. And so if you have more complicated issues that you think that might benefit from an on-site meeting, we're happy to do that. Feel free to reach out to us. I think we have a slide at the end with additional contact information. So I just wanted to mention that.
Great, thanks, Ryan. I'm just going to read off these few comments and then we'll start to wrap up. There's two comments from Rachel Hallowgrass. Favorable comment. I've heard Megan Schwartzman speak, the UC Berkeley researcher and mother of a mother who was nearly fatally struck by a car while riding her bicycle. So thank you for existing cycle tracks in the campus. That's the city of Berkeley. I really like this proposal for Dana Street. As a cyclist who lives south of campus and goes there to work, I've been concerned for years about the road quality and safety around cars. The two-way cycle track would really help by separating vulnerable bikes from the much heavier cars and buses. She continues that she's relied on the 6 bus to get to work on the Berkeley campus. I appreciate this effort to improve transit via extending or prioritizing green lights. And there's one final question, and then we'll look at the Spanish and Chinese lines to see if there's questions there. Has there been an examination of the parking spots on cross streets immediately west and east of Dana Street? There are multiple spots that are neither residential parking permit or non-metered parking. This is not necessarily AC Transit jurisdiction, but should be examined to create additional parking and drop-off solutions to free up Dana Street. Eric, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a really great observation, and I think the commenter is right that that's not something that AC Transit is expected to address, but it is actually certainly something that the Southside Complete Streets project will be looking at, because we'll be taking a comprehensive look at the parking passenger and commercial loading on all 4 corridors of that Southside Complete Streets project, as well as on the intersecting streets up to a certain distance. Because we don't want to look at these streets in isolation. We want to look at them as a connected system. And if we're affecting parking on Dana, is there an opportunity to improve that parking in a different way on Haste, for example? So that's going to be something that we look at comprehensively through the Southside Complete Streets project.
All right, thanks, Eric. So that's a good, healthy list of questions and comments, but we do want to make sure that we check with all of our input channels. So let's check the Zoom phone lines. Zach, do we have anything from our phone participants?
No questions at this time.
All right, thanks, Zach. Diane, anything from the Spanish phone line?
No questions from the Spanish line.
Great, thanks, Diane. And David, do we have any questions from the Chinese phone line?
No questions from the Chinese phone line at this time.
Okay, so thank you. That was excellent, really good feedback for us. We'd like to give a big thank you to everyone who joined us on this meeting. Recordings of this session in English, the PowerPoint presentation in English, Spanish, and Chinese, additional project information, and AC Transit contact information will be available on the project website. Again, I'll spell this out, www.actransit.org/RAPID-CORRIDORS. www.actransit.org rapid corridors. So please send your comments and feedback by June 7th so we can consider them for advancing this project. And again, as a reminder, the Telegraph Avenue Rapid Corridors Project virtual meeting will take place on Thursday, June 3rd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. You can find more information about the project and meeting online at the project website and can access that project survey at tinyurl.com/RC-TELEGRAPH, tinyurl.com/RC-telegraph. Thanks again, everyone, for participating, and have a good rest of the evening. Good night.